A 68-year-old woman stood in her studio and set fire to 40 years of work. She picked up one canvas after another, looked at each one for the last time, then dropped them into the metal barrel. The flames consumed yellow first, then red, then blue. Within seconds, each painting turned to ash. Barbara reached for the next canvas. Her neighbors shouted from outside, worried there might be a fire, but Barbara simply opened the window and told them everything was fine before continuing. 40 years, hundreds of paintings, thousands of hours of work, all of it burning, and Barbara felt nothing except an empty hollow in her chest. Because a week ago, the doctor had said 4 months, and Barbara had made a decision. If the world hadn't wanted to see her work, then it never would. But just as she was about to throw the last painting into the flames, her phone rang. An unfamiliar number. A man introduced himself, said he was calling from a gallery in Manhattan, explained he'd been trying to reach Barbara for weeks, and there was excitement in his voice. But Barbara didn't listen. She hung up, threw the last painting into the fire, and it was done. By hanging up that phone, she was perhaps making the biggest mistake of her life, but she didn't know it yet. A week earlier, it had been a November morning in New York, and Barbara Smith sat in the waiting room of a small clinic. Old magazines lay on the side table. The walls were pale green, and the air conditioner rattled. Barbara kept her hands folded over her purse as she waited. For the past few months, there had been this exhaustion, a constant weariness that followed her from morning until night. The stomach pains had started next. Then her appetite disappeared. At first, she dismissed it all because she was getting older. This was normal, she'd thought. But when the weight began falling off, her friend had insisted she see a doctor. Tests had been ordered, blood drawn, scans taken, a biopsy performed. Now the results were ready, and the nurse called Barbara inside. The doctor sat at his desk with a file open in front of him, reading glasses perched on his nose. When Barbara entered, he gestured for her to sit, and she did. He opened the file, read silently for a moment, then removed his glasses and looked at her. He explained that the test results had come back, and the news wasn't good. Liver cancer, advanced stage, already spread, treatment options were limited. 4 months, maybe a bit more, but not much. Barbara nodded as if she were listening to a weather report. She should have been shocked, should have cried, should have asked questions, but she felt nothing except a strange emptiness. The doctor talked about treatments, mentioned chemotherapy, discussed palliative care, but Barbara wasn't really listening because the conclusion was clear. 4 months, 120 days. Whatever else was said, she was dying. The doctor suggested they meet again in a week, told her to consult with her family, but Barbara explained she had no family. She'd been widowed 10 years ago, had no children. Her relatives lived far away. She was alone. A flash of sadness crossed the doctor's face, but Barbara didn't care. She stood up, thanked him, and left the room. When she stepped outside, the street looked strangely normal. People walked past, drank their coffee. The sun shone. The world kept turning. But Barbara's world had stopped. She took the subway to Brooklyn, walked to her apartment, climbed the stairs, unlocked the door, went inside. It was a small place, 1 bedroom and a living room, the home of a solitary woman. She sat in her chair and thought. Barbara Smith had always been an artist. As a child, she'd drawn constantly, the margins of her notebooks filling with shapes. She'd seen colors everywhere. In high school, her teacher had noticed her talent and suggested she apply to art school, but her family had refused. Her father had been clear about it. You'll starve with art. Find a proper job. Barbara had studied to be a secretary, started working in an office, but at night she drew, on weekends. She painted. She couldn't live any other way. At 24, she'd moved to Manhattan, rented a tiny apartment, found a studio space. During the day, she waitressed. At night, she painted. It was the early 80s, and the New York art world was exploding with new galleries opening on every corner, new artists being discovered every day. Barbara was there too, in her studio, in front of her canvases, working until dawn. She created paintings that were abstract, colorful, passionate. Every brushstroke was a piece of her soul. In 1984, she'd participated in her first show, a small gallery in the East Village. 20 people had come to the opening, and she'd sold 1 painting for $100. The buyer said he'd hang it in his bathroom, but Barbara hadn't cared. It was her first sale. In 1985, she'd shown at another gallery, slightly bigger this time. A few critics had come, taken notes, but none of them had written anything. She'd sold another painting for $150, never even learned who bought it. The following years brought applications to galleries, museums, competitions. The answer was always the same. Interesting, but no. Technically good, but not commercially viable. Sorry. Barbara didn't give up because she didn't know how to do anything else. Making art was as necessary as breathing. In the 90s, she'd married a quiet accountant named John. He didn't understand art, but he supported Barbara, told her to keep going, said someday someone would understand. Barbara kept going. In the early 2000s, John had died suddenly from a heart attack. Barbara was alone again, but she continued painting. Because what else could she do? Every day she went to her studio and worked. She no longer painted for sales or recognition. She just painted to. 40 years had passed this way. She'd created hundreds of paintings. She'd never become famous, never become wealthy. No one knew her name, but she hadn't minded because she had her art, and that was enough. Until the doctor said 4 months. That night, Barbara had gone to her studio. It was in Brooklyn, in the basement of an old building, small, damp, cold, but it was Barbara's place. She'd been in this studio for 40 years. The walls were covered with paintings, some new and some old. Canvases were stacked on the floor. Paint bottles and brushes and palettes filled the corners. Barbara had looked at the walls and felt something rise inside her. Was it anger? Was it sadness? Was it disappointment? She didn't know, but she felt something. 40 years. Thousands of hours. And what had come of it? Nothing. No one had seen these paintings. No one had cared about them. No one had understood them. They sat here gathering dust in the darkness. What would happen to them after Barbara died? Who would take them? Would they rot in some storage unit? She'd sat in the middle of the studio and thought through the entire night. By morning, she'd made her decision. She would destroy everything. The following days, Barbara prepared. She cleaned the studio, created a safe area, found a metal barrel, filled it with water, bought a fire extinguisher. She informed her neighbors she'd be doing some cleaning. There might be smoke. And one morning she began. The first painting was 40 years old. She'd titled it Red Morning, from 1984. Barbara had been 24 when she painted it, full of hope back then. It was a small canvas, but the colors were vivid. Reds, oranges, yellows. Like a sunrise, like a new beginning. Barbara picked up the painting and looked at it one last time. The work was naive, but beautiful. She struck a match. The canvas caught fire. The flames ate the yellow first, then the orange, then the red. In seconds, it was ash. The second painting was her favorite, Blue Silence from 1985. She'd worked on it for months. A large canvas in shades of blue, navy, cobalt, turquoise. She'd been trying to capture silence, solitude, depth. Had she succeeded? She didn't know, but she'd loved this painting. She burned it. The blues darkened, turned black, became ash. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth. One after another. Barbara paused sometimes. Her eyes filled with tears sometimes. But she didn't stop. She had to do this. By noon, she'd burned half of them. Hundreds of paintings. Ash. The studio was filled with smoke. Her eyes stung. She struggled to breathe, but she continued. Her neighbors had come by with concern, asking if everything was all right. Barbara told them she was fine, just burning some old things. Don't worry, and closed the door. She continued. Afternoon became evening, became night. She turned on the lights and kept going. She took the paintings one by one, looked at each for the last time, then burned them. Some she remembered making. Which day, what mood, what she'd been thinking. Some she didn't remember at all. They were too old. By midnight she was exhausted. She sat on the floor and looked at her hands. They were covered in ash. Her face was covered in soot, but she wasn't finished. Hundreds of paintings still remained. She stood up and continued. When morning came, she was nearly done. Only 10 or 15 paintings remained, and these were the newest ones from the past few years. For a moment, she considered keeping these, but no, everything had to go. All or nothing. She reached for the last painting. She'd called it Orange Hope, painted just last year. Orange tones, warm, bright. It conveyed hope. which was ironic. Just as she was about to take it, her phone rang, her cell phone in her pocket. An unfamiliar number. Normally, she wouldn't have answered, but in that moment, she didn't know why she did. Maybe she was too tired. Maybe something stopped her. The man introduced himself quickly. Marcus Chen, Manhattan Modern Art Gallery. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. There's something very important about your paintings. Barbara hung up. It was too late. Whatever he wanted. She'd needed galleries 40 years ago. Now she had 4 months, and her paintings were burning. She threw the last painting into the fire. The orange colors darkened. It was finished. The studio was empty now. The walls were bare. Only ash remained. 40 years of work turned to ash. Barbara felt nothing. She was just tired. She went home, showered, lay down in bed, and slept. The next day, the phone rang again. The same number. Barbara didn't look. The day after, it rang again. Barbara didn't answer. On the third day, the man left a message. Please call me back. This is very important. It's about your paintings. Barbara deleted the message. On the fourth day, someone knocked on her door. Barbara asked who it was from behind the door. Marcus Chen, please. I need to speak with you. Barbara told him to go away. She didn't paint anymore. But your old paintings, the man insisted. There's nothing left. Barbara said, what do you mean? Nothing, the man asked. I burned them all. Now please leave, Barbara said. A long silence followed. Then the man asked when she'd burned them, and his voice had changed. Last week, Barbara said, an even longer silence. Then the man said, please open the door. I need to show you something. And there was such desperation in his voice that Barbara stopped. She opened the door. Standing before her was an Asian man in his 40s wearing a suit. His tie loosened, his face sweaty, as if he'd been running. May I come in? He asked. Barbara stepped aside. They went into the living room. The man pulled a tablet from his bag, turned it on, and handed it to Barbara. On the screen was a website, Christie's, the famous auction house. In the photograph was a painting. Barbara recognized it immediately. Blue Silence, her own painting. She'd burned it just days ago. The man asked if this was her painting. Yes, but I burned it, Barbara said, confused. No, the man explained. This is the original from 1985. Did you sell this to someone? Barbara thought back. I don't remember. I sold a few in the 80s. Very cheap, $100 or $150. I don't remember who bought them. The man pointed to the price on the screen. Barbara saw the numbers. $150,000. Her breath caught. This must be a mistake, she said. No mistake. It went to auction in New York last month and sold for a record price, the man said. Barbara sat down. Her hands were shaking. But no one knew me. For 40 years, no one, she said. The man began to explain. We know you were a lost genius. In the 80s, your style was too far ahead of its time, and no one understood. But 10 years ago, art historians started re-examining that period. Your name came up. They asked who was Barbara Smith. They started searching for your work. Very little was found. Just a few paintings in collectors' hands, and each one turned out to be worth a fortune. Barbara started crying. She put her hands over her face. 40 years. She'd waited 40 years. And now it was too late. The man said he wanted to see her other paintings, that they could do a retrospective, maybe a book. But Barbara said there was nothing left. I burned hundreds of them, 40 years of work, all gone. And her voice was breaking. The man's face went pale. He stood up, went to the window, stared outside for a long time. Then he turned and asked why. Barbara looked at him. 'Cause no one cared. I waited 40 years, and no one came. And now the doctor says 4 months. Liver cancer. I'm dying. What were they supposed to do sitting there? No one was going to see them anyway. The man sat down. He put his head in his hands. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he asked if there was anything else. Sketches, drawings, photographs, Barbara thought. There are a few old notebooks, working notes, maybe some photographs, but they're worthless. May I see them? The man asked. Barbara hesitated, but then went to her bedroom. She pulled 2 old boxes from under the closet, dusty and worn. She brought them out. The man opened the boxes. Inside were notebooks, sketchbooks, notes, drawings. There were old photographs from the 80s and 90s, pictures of the paintings. The man turned the pages, examined them carefully, and smiled. "These are valuable, very valuable. We can still do a show with these," Barbara said. "But these are just drafts." "No," the man said. "These show an artist's creative process. They're historical documents. Miss Smith, you were a forgotten genius, and now the world will know you." From that day forward, everything changed. Marcus took Barbara to a lawyer. Contracts were signed. A date was set for the exhibition, 4 months away. Barbara said, "But by then I'll be." And Marcus said, "I know, but maybe we can do it. Maybe we'll make it in time." Preparations began. Art historians came and conducted interviews with Barbara. They examined the old notebooks, cataloged them, restored the photographs. Every day Barbara answered questions and shared her memories. One day, a journalist came for an interview. "Why were you discovered so late?" the journalist asked. Barbara thought about it. "I don't know, maybe I was at the wrong time. Maybe too early. Maybe too late. Maybe I was just invisible." "Do you have any regrets?" the journalist asked. "About what?" Barbara asked. "About continuing with art. Maybe if you'd chosen a different career," the journalist suggested. "No, I don't regret it. Art was my breathing. I couldn't have lived without it." Barbara said, "Do you regret burning the paintings?" the journalist asked. Barbara stopped. She didn't answer for a long time. "Yes, very much," she finally said. 3 months passed. The exhibition was ready. Barbara Smith, The Lost Years, at a large gallery in Manhattan. Opening invitations had been sent. Press releases issued. Barbara had grown thinner during these 3 months. She was constantly tired, but she was still standing, still here. Opening night arrived. Barbara wore a black dress and had her hair done. When she reached the gallery, there was a crowd. Hundreds of people, critics, collectors, artists, journalists. On the walls hung the sketchbooks and photographs, pictures of the burned paintings, documentation of the lost works. People looked and talked and marveled. People came up to Barbara. "Your work is extraordinary," they said. "Why were you discovered so late?" they asked. "It's so tragic that you burned the paintings," they said. Barbara smiled and thanked them and talked. But inside there was an emptiness. The paintings weren't there. Only their ghosts remained. At the end of the night, Marcus came over. "It was a success. Everyone's talking about you," he said. "But the paintings are gone." Barbara said. "Yes, but maybe." Marcus paused. "Maybe what?" Barbara asked. "Maybe you could make something new. You still have time," Marcus said. Barbara thought about it. Could she create after 40 years this close to death? Could she create? The next day, she went to a studio. A new studio that Marcus had found, spacious and bright and beautiful. She set up a blank canvas. She picked up a brush. She opened the paints, and she began. The first brushstroke felt strange. Her hands seemed to have forgotten. But she continued. Colors mixed, shapes formed. Hours passed. Barbara stopped, stepped back, looked. The painting wasn't finished, but something was there. It was different. It wasn't the old Barbara. It was deeper, more mature, more at peace. Weeks passed, and Barbara went to the studio every day. She made new paintings. They weren't in her old style. This was something new. These were paintings made with the knowledge of death, the knowledge of loss, the knowledge of regret. Marcus came and saw them. "These are your best work," he said. "But the old ones are lost," Barbara said. "Yes, but these are here, and maybe losing them was necessary so you could make these," Marcus said. Months continued to pass. Barbara grew weaker, but she kept painting. The new work piled up in the studio. Marcus came regularly, documented everything, made plans for another show. One day, Barbara's doctor called her in for tests. She went reluctantly, expecting bad news. But when the doctor looked at the results, he seemed confused. He ran the tests again. The results were the same. The cancer had stabilized. There was no progression. The doctor said he couldn't explain it, that this was very rare, that they would continue monitoring her. Barbara left the hospital and walked through the city. The sun was shining. People moved past her on the sidewalk. She was still here. A year passed. Barbara was still alive. Her new exhibition opened, Barbara Smith, Rebirth. The new paintings hung on the walls. An even bigger crowd came, even more attention. Barbara stood in a corner and watched. People looked at her work, disgusted, admired it. She'd waited 40 years for this. She'd almost missed it completely. What if she hadn't answered that phone call? What if Marcus hadn't come to her door? No one would have ever known, but they knew now. Barbara looked out the gallery window at the city beyond. The lights were bright. The streets were full. The world kept moving. She was still here. She was still breathing. And for now, that was enough.